In 1841, a Scottish inventor named Alexander Bain buried two different metals in moist soil behind his workshop and discovered something that should have changed human civilization forever. He discovered that the Earth itself could generate electricity indefinitely without any external power source. He was not trying to create a revolutionary new battery technology. He was simply experimenting with practical ways to reduce the significant operating costs of telegraph lines that were rapidly spreading across Europe and North America. What he found instead was that the ordinary ground beneath his feet contained unlimited electrical potential that required no fuel, no chemical refills, no complex maintenance, and no connection to any power generation facility. Two metal rods buried in the earth, moist soil surrounding them, infinite electricity flowing between them forever. The discovery should have transformed human civilization permanently and completely. Every single home on Earth sits directly on top of a battery that never runs out and never needs replacement. Every farm anywhere in the world contains all the raw materials necessary to generate free electrical power without paying a single utility bill ever again. Every community from the largest city to the smallest village could have achieved complete energy independence using technology far simpler than a common household flashlight. The Scottish inventor carefully documented his findings and published them in respected scientific journals of his era, where they attracted considerable attention from engineers and businessmen alike. Researchers and engineers across Europe replicated his simple experiments successfully and confirmed his remarkable results. Telegraph companies throughout the continent began implementing earth battery systems to dramatically reduce their ongoing operating costs. The technology worked exactly as Bain had documented, with reliability and consistency that surprised even its most enthusiastic advocates and supporters. Then, something remarkable happened over the following decades. A man named Thomas Edison built a power grid that required customers to pay monthly bills forever. Utility companies formed monopolies over electricity distribution. Governments granted these monopolies legal protection from competition. And the earth battery that powered telegraph networks for 50 years quietly disappeared from public knowledge. The power companies did not disprove that soil generates electricity. They simply made sure you would never learn that it does. This is the story of the earth battery, the technology that turns dirt into power, and the industry that buried it so they could sell you what the ground provides for free. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Let's begin. The science of earth batteries is so simple that it seems impossible until you understand basic electrochemistry. Every battery in existence operates on identical principles. Two different metals separated by a substance that conducts ions create electrical potential. When you connect these metals through a wire, electrons flow from one to the other, generating usable current. This is how car batteries work. This is how phone batteries work. This is how every battery ever made works. The earth beneath your feet is a massive electrolyte solution. Soil contains water mixed with dissolved minerals, salts, and organic acids. This mixture conducts ions exactly like the acid in a car battery or the paste in a flashlight cell. The soil is not just dirt. It is a natural electrolyte that exists everywhere humans live. When you bury two different metals in moist soil, you create a battery automatically. Copper and zinc are the most common pairing. The zinc acts as the negative electrode and slowly releases electrons. The copper acts as the positive electrode and collects those electrons. The soil between them conducts the ionic flow that allows the reaction to continue. A single earth battery cell produces approximately 1 volt of electrical potential. This matches the output of a standard AA battery. Multiple cells connected in series multiply the voltage. 10 cells produce 10 volts. 100 cells produce 100 volts. The scalability has no theoretical limit beyond the available land area. The current output depends on the surface area of the buried electrodes. Larger metal plates produce more current. Deeper burial in moister soil increases output. The addition of salt or other electrolytes to the surrounding soil boosts performance further. Every parameter is adjustable based on power requirements. The battery never needs charging because the chemical reactions are self-sustaining. As long as the soil remains moist and the metals remain buried, the battery continues generating electricity indefinitely. Installations documented in the 1800s continued functioning for decades without any maintenance whatsoever. The lifespan exceeds human lifetimes with minimal degradation. The history of earth batteries begins with Alexander Bain in Scotland in 1841. Bain was a clockmaker and inventor who had developed an early version of the electric telegraph. He understood that telegraph systems required reliable electrical power to operate over long distances. The voltaic pile batteries of his era were expensive, required constant maintenance, and failed frequently. He began searching for alternatives that could reduce the cost of powering telegraph networks. His experiments with buried metal electrodes produced unexpected results. He discovered that two different metals buried several feet apart in moist ground generated consistent electrical output. The voltage was sufficient to power telegraph equipment. The current was adequate for transmission over moderate distances. The system required no consumable materials and no regular attention. Bain patented his earth battery design in 1841 and began promoting it to telegraph companies. The technology offered compelling economics for commercial telegraph operators. Conventional batteries required constant replacement and maintenance. Earth batteries required only initial installation. The long-term cost savings were substantial enough to attract serious interest. Telegraph networks began implementing earth battery systems throughout the 1840s and 1850s. Documented installations powered telegraph lines across Europe and North America. Engineers refined the designs based on operational experience. The technology matured into a reliable standard component of telegraph infrastructure. The most famous earth battery installation demonstrated capabilities far beyond telegraphy. In 1898, a Kentucky farmer named Nathan Stubblefield used earth batteries to power his entire property. He generated enough electricity to run lights, equipment, and even an early wireless telephone system. His demonstrations attracted national newspaper coverage and scientific attention. Stubblefield proved that earth batteries could power more than just low-current telegraph signals. His installation showed that properly designed earth battery systems could meet the electrical needs of homes and farms without any external power connection. The implications threatened every assumption underlying the emerging electrical utility industry. Thomas Edison's centralized power grid created the economic foundation for systematically suppressing earth battery technology and erasing it from public awareness. Edison opened the very first commercial electrical power generating station in the Pearl Street district of New York City in September of 1882. His entire business model depended absolutely on customers paying recurring monthly fees for electricity delivered through copper wires from large central generating stations that his company owned and controlled. The more individual customers and businesses who connected to his expanding grid network, the more reliable, recurring revenue his company would earn month after month. The more electricity those connected customers consumed in their daily lives, the higher their monthly bills would grow and the more profit would flow to Edison's investors. Earth batteries represented a direct existential threat to every aspect of this carefully designed business model. Any customer who could generate sufficient electricity from their own property using only buried metals in soil would never need to connect to Edison's expensive grid infrastructure. They would never pay a single monthly utility bill. They would never become a recurring revenue source feeding profits to shareholders. They would achieve energy independence that made Edison's entire enterprise irrelevant to their lives. From Edison's commercial perspective, earth batteries were not merely a form of competition to be outmaneuvered. They represented complete destruction of his business model. Edison waged remarkably aggressive campaigns against any and all competing electrical technologies throughout his entire career as an inventor and businessman. His vicious attacks on alternating current technology, promoted by George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla, are extremely well documented in historical records. He personally funded gruesome public demonstrations of alternating current's supposed dangers, including the deliberate electrocution of stray animals to frighten the public. He lobbied government officials at every level to restrict and regulate competing technologies. He understood with perfect clarity that whoever controlled electricity would control the economic future of modern civilization. Earth batteries received no such public attacks because they required no public defense. The technology was already disappearing from mainstream awareness through simpler means. Scientific journals stopped publishing earth battery research as funding shifted toward technologies that generated commercial revenue. Universities stopped teaching earth battery principles as curricula aligned with industry preferences. The electrical utility industry grew into one of the most powerful commercial forces in modern civilization. Billions of people now pay monthly electricity bills that transfer wealth from consumers to utility shareholders. The infrastructure locks customers into dependency with no practical alternative. The regulatory framework protects utility monopolies from competition that might offer independence. Earth batteries remain legal to build and use on private property. No law prohibits burying copper and zinc in your backyard. The suppression works through ignorance rather than prohibition. Most people simply never learn that the technology exists or that it works reliably for generating household electricity. Nathan Stubblefield's remarkable story reveals exactly how completely earth battery technology was deliberately erased from public memory and historical records. Stubblefield was a humble melon farmer working the red clay soil near Murray, Kentucky, who became increasingly obsessed with electrical experiments that consumed most of his free time and modest income. He had absolutely no formal scientific training or university education in physics or engineering, but he possessed remarkable intuitive understanding of electrical principles that allowed him to achieve results that baffled professionally trained engineers. He spent years and years developing increasingly sophisticated earth battery systems on his rural farm, gradually improving their output and reliability through patient trial and error experimentation. By the mid-1890s, he had achieved consistent results that professional electrical engineers at major universities considered theoretically impossible. His most advanced earth battery installations reliably powered multiple buildings across his entire farming property without any connection whatsoever to external power sources or conventional battery systems. Contemporary newspaper accounts from reporters who actually visited his farm describe electric lights burning continuously day and night, agricultural equipment operating with perfect reliability, and various experimental communication devices functioning smoothly with power drawn entirely and exclusively from metal electrodes buried in the Kentucky soil. Skeptical newspaper reporters who visited his remote farm specifically to debunk his claims instead verified that no conventional power source existed anywhere on the property. The electricity powering everything came from buried metal electrodes and absolutely nothing else. Stubblefield also developed wireless telephone technology years before Marconi received credit for radio invention. He demonstrated voice transmission without wires to crowds of witnesses, including journalists and civic officials. His wireless system operated using power from earth batteries rather than conventional electrical sources. The combination of wireless communication and earth-generated power represented technological achievement decades ahead of mainstream development. The scientific establishment largely ignored his demonstrations. Professional engineers dismissed his claims without investigation. Academic institutions showed no interest in studying his methods. The technical journals that had published earth battery research 50 years earlier now rejected any mention of the technology. Stubblefield died in poverty in 1928, forgotten and dismissed as a crackpot. His farm was sold, his equipment was scattered, his techniques were never formally documented by qualified researchers. The knowledge he had accumulated through decades of practical experimentation disappeared with him. The town of Murray, Kentucky eventually recognized him as a telecommunications pioneer. A monument acknowledges his wireless telephone demonstrations. But his earth battery work remains largely unknown even to residents of the community where he achieved his most remarkable results. The technology that powered his experiments was written out of his own legacy. Building an earth battery requires only basic materials available at any hardware store. The simplest design uses copper and zinc electrodes buried in moist soil. Copper pipe sections work well as positive electrodes. Galvanized steel or pure zinc rods serve as negative electrodes. The electrodes should be buried at least 2 feet deep, where soil moisture remains relatively constant. Spacing between electrodes affects output characteristics. Each copper-zinc pair produces approximately 0.8 to 1.1 volts, depending on soil conditions. Moister soil with higher mineral content produces higher voltage. Sandy, dry soil produces lower output. Adding salt, wood ash, or compost to the surrounding soil increases electrolyte concentration and improves performance. Multiple cells connected in series multiply voltage for practical applications. 12 cells connected in series produce approximately 12 volts, suitable for charging batteries or powering low-voltage devices. 24 cells produce 24 volts, matching common solar panel output. The scalability depends only on available space and materials. Current output increases with electrode surface area and soil contact. Larger diameter pipes produce more current than smaller ones. Longer electrodes produce more than shorter ones. Multiple electrodes connected in parallel multiply current while maintaining voltage. System design follows standard electrical principles. The cost of materials for a basic earth battery system is remarkably low. Copper pipe and zinc rods, sufficient for a 12-volt system, cost less than $50 at current prices. The installation requires only digging holes and making simple wire connections. No specialized tools or expertise are necessary. Maintenance requirements are minimal for properly installed systems. The electrodes gradually corrode over years of operation and eventually require replacement. The zinc electrode corrodes faster than the copper and typically needs replacement first. Replacement intervals of 10 to 20 years are commonly reported by practitioners. The electricity generated is identical to electricity from any other source. It can charge batteries, power LED lights, run small motors, and operate any device within its voltage and current capabilities. The Earth does not care whether you know about this technology. It generates electricity regardless of what the utility companies want you to believe. The Earth battery buried beneath Nathan Stubblefield's Kentucky farm in 1898 represents possibility that powerful industries have deliberately erased from human knowledge. A family anywhere in the world could generate electricity forever from the ground beneath their home. They would need only copper, zinc, and moist soil. They would pay no monthly bills to distant corporations. They would depend on no infrastructure controlled by monopolies. They would achieve energy independence using technology proven reliable over 180 years of documented use. The utility industry made sure that family would never learn such technology existed. They funded research that required expensive equipment and ongoing fuel purchases. They shaped educational curricula to exclude self-sufficient alternatives. They created regulatory frameworks that protected their monopolies from competition. They built a civilization dependent on paying them forever. Every month, billions of people pay electricity bills that transfer wealth from families to shareholders. Every payment reinforces the system that suppresses alternatives. Every bill represents a choice that was never actually offered. The earth battery option was hidden so effectively that most people cannot imagine electricity without monthly payments. The technology still works exactly as reliably as it did when Alexander Bain first documented it in 1841. The underlying physics has not changed in nearly 2 centuries. The electrochemistry has not changed either. Copper and zinc electrodes buried in moist, mineral-rich soil still generate consistent electricity through the exact same ion exchange reactions that Bain discovered and documented so carefully. The basic science remains completely valid and reproducible, regardless of how thoroughly and systematically the knowledge was suppressed by commercial interests. You can build a fully functional earth battery system this very weekend for less than the cost of a single month's electricity bill from your local utility company. The materials are legal to purchase. The construction requires no permits. The operation violates no laws. The only barrier is the knowledge that utility companies made sure you would never receive. 2 common metals buried in ordinary backyard soil. That is genuinely all it takes to generate free electricity. The same ground that grows your vegetables and fruits can also power your entire home. The same earth that supports your family's food production can simultaneously eliminate your electricity bills forever. The technology is not complicated or difficult to understand. It is not expensive to build or implement. It is not unreliable or impractical for everyday use. It is simply forbidden knowledge that extremely powerful industries desperately need you to never discover or share with others. Now you know why they buried it. Now you know what they never wanted you to learn. If this opens something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every single like and share spreads what they tried to keep hidden for over a century. See you in the next one.